about Sitecore XP Upgrades. I'll start by telling you a little bit about myself, about Macmillan, I guess, as a charity. So I've been at Macmillan for almost 10 years now. It'll be 10 years this summer. And I started as a developer, and then became senior developer, now engineering manager about a year and a half ago. We started working with Sitecore, I think, in 2018 with a consultancy called Endava as a partner at that time. We kind of quickly got up to speed, and we now have, I think, 8 certified Sitecore developers within the team. We're quite a small development team at the moment within digital development. We're trying to kind of bring more of our developers up to kind of their skill level up with Sitecore at the moment. I'm on LinkedIn, so the QR code is there if you want to scan it and hook up with me afterwards. Or if you have any questions, I'll put that on the last slide as well. We'll move on to talking about upgrades. We kind of at the start of last year, at the end of 2022, we were on Sitecore XP 9.3. We have SSA 9.3 as well. We were self-managed on Azure hosted environments. We were on Azure PaaS. We had scale topology environments for UAT in production. We had single topology environments for our test, dev, and local environments. We had Solar hosted on infrastructure as a service. We had VM that was running Solar. We had some problems with Solar before, so it was quite highly scaled up. Part of the reason for that, I think, was around some changes that we made now around the not indexing anonymous contacts any longer. That was causing us a bit of a problem, I think, around that time, because the XDB indexes were becoming really, really big. So we now stopped doing that, and we use DigiSuite for our DAM. Probably a lot of you are using the Sitecore DAM at the moment, but we're on DigiSuite. And in terms of the next slide, in terms of why do we want to upgrade, so there were 2 primary reasons why we wanted to upgrade. The first reason was to get back onto mainstream support. So mainstream support for Sitecore 10.2, which we're on at the moment, I think ends at the end of this year. With Sitecore 10.3, I think it ends at the end of next year, but there's extended support, I think, up until the end of 2027 for Sitecore 10.2. That was one of the kind of 2 primary reasons why we wanted to move to 10.2. And the other primary reason was to give us a bit of future flexibility. So we are currently kind of evaluating our options with regards to where we want to go next. So one option, I guess, is to stay on XP and kind of still have experience editor support on XP, and then use kind of SXA or headless SXA and create headless SXA sites. At the moment, we've moved a couple of sites into our Sitecore 10.2 solution that are not headless SXA sites, and part of the reason for that is because the kind of cost of moving on to headless was perceived as being a little bit larger upfront than just kind of moving those sites in. We were on kind of umbrella platforms that we would otherwise have to upgrade for these sites, and we've moved those sites into Sitecore now. They'll be going live. Actually, one of those is going live the week after next. In terms of future flexibility, I guess, so what we could do is we could move to headless SXA. That would allow us to take advantage of Experience Edge, but potentially with GraphQL endpoints, we could then move towards using Next.js as well for front end, and to use incremental static regeneration, which would vastly improve the performance of our websites, which is something that we would very much like to do at the moment, because all those calls to the web database at the moment, we use some level of caching and we use Redis, but the performance of our website can certainly be improved, and that's something that we would hopefully like to take advantage of. Whether we move on to XM Cloud at the moment, it's very much up in the air, I think, because we have quite a few XDB personalizations. We'd have to disentangle those personalizations if we were to move on to XM Cloud. The alternative solution, if we were to move to XM Cloud, is we'd have to then use CDB and personalize instead for those personalizations that we currently have set up via XDB, because XDB is not supported on XM Cloud. It's kind of to be decided there. So in terms of like the steps and where did we want to get to, I guess. So we wanted Sitecore upgraded to 10.2. At the time, we didn't move to Sitecore 10.3 because at the time the maturity level of Sitecore 10.3 was quite kind of young in its inception. So we decided not to move to the very latest at that time. We wanted to move our hosting to Sitecore Managed Cloud. We had a few incidents before on our website, and with Sitecore Managed Cloud, we obviously take advantage of their out-of-hours support. We wanted to move to the SaaS-based search stack solution for Solar. As I mentioned, Solar on IaaS, we had a kind of quite a sort of powerful VM that was hosting Solar before. We wanted a solution that would allow our Solar solution to be managed by Sitecore. And it being SaaS-based kind of fit into that mold. And actually the DigiSuite DAM that we were using, the version that we were using for DigiSuite, that had to be upgraded because it was incompatible with 10.2. So that was another thing that we had to undertake, which we found out as we started looking into the upgrade. So in terms of the steps for the upgrade, so I'm going to just run through now, like kind of incrementally, the steps that we found we needed to take in order to move from 9.3 to 10.2. Maybe talk a little bit about what would be required, we think, if we were to move to 10.2 from 10.2 to 10.3 or from 10.2 to 10.4. It's probably a problem that a lot of you are encountering at the moment if you're on XP. So the first thing is to get a local Sitecore installation framework installation done with vanilla databases. So that kind of sounds sometimes a little bit simpler than it is, I think, because a lot of the time you end up with problems during that installation process. Sometimes it runs for quite a while before you end up getting error messages. So we're just going to run through a couple of the things that we encountered, which I think would be common errors for people. So one of these was around where you get this error message whereby you can't find a solid config XML and class path. We found actually that if you had a previous installation of Sitecore, typically it would be your Java home and solid home environment variables that would be the problem here. If you deleted those and you tried installation again, typically that would work. Another common problem that we had was around our certificates. So you need to make sure that your certificates are trusted. So you want to add trust server certificates through where required to your Exponent XP0 JSON file. That's the same folder in the same folder as the installer. So that's something that we did, and you have to add that in multiple different places where you invoke the SQL commands. So those were kind of two common problems that we had. Just from that installation, eventually you'll get to this page where it will say installation completed, and hopefully then you can browse to your vanilla Sitecore. The next step was to upgrade the databases. So in doing that, we backed up the old databases and restored them with different names. So this would be the 9.3 databases. You might want to restore those as kind of 10.2 databases. You want to apply the provided SQL scripts. You want to run the Sitecore update application, and that needs to run because we need to clean up the items as they're now provided as resource files or data files. And the last thing is to update the database names within the shards global table of the shard map manager database, as well as the shards local table of the horizontally sharded XDB databases. As I mentioned before, we had some problems with our XDB databases because they've grown really large, and I'll get onto that a little bit later about how we sort of tackled that problem. I'd be really interested to hear about other people that have also had that problem, about how you tackled it before, because our solution to it was probably not what Sitecore perhaps would have recommended or come up with. So if anybody's had that problem before and you've got some good ideas for how you can manage the sizes of the XDB databases, I would be really interested to talk about it. So the third step we have was to update the NuGet package references. So the NuGet package references have to be updated within your solution. And this would include then any dependent packages on your versions of the Sitecore assemblies. So that was something that we went through. In terms of step 4, you'd install the SXA and Sitecore PowerShell extensions packages. So typically the versions of SXA, they match up with the versions of Sitecore. So if with Sitecore 10.2, you have SXA 10.2. And the Sitecore PowerShell extensions package was 6.3 is the one that's compatible, I believe, with Sitecore 10.2. The next step would be to apply the community hotfix updates. So actually between 9.3 and 10.2, the way that Sitecore provided hotfixes changed a little bit. So on Sitecore 9.3, so Sitecore had 2 ways actually of providing hotfixes on 9.3. So there was one whereby they provided individual hotfixes for individual fixes, but there was also a cumulative hotfix package. On 9.3, the cumulative hotfix package was not separated between your on-prem and your cloud cumulative files. So with 10.2, those are now separated. That's a change that's happened between 9.3 and 10.2, and therefore we decided that we would change our approach to the installation of the cumulative hotfixes as well. So actually now what we have is we have a hotfixes directory within our local solution. We have Go tasks that run in order to then apply the hotfixes from those local directories. And our hotfixes that are used for our cloud environments, or the cloud community hotfixes, they are, we put them into overrides directories at the moment for those assemblies and configurations that we need. I know that there's a different approach for that, which we've talked to Joseph, who's our technical architect, who's been helping us. There's a L'Oreal model for that as well, which is that they basically create their own internal NuGet packages, which they then subsequently install into the solution. So there's a few different approaches, I think, that people are using on how they install their cumulative hotfix packages. But yeah, we have, I mean, the community hotfix updates, they're not always the easiest to apply, and I had a conversation with Dan about this just before I came on stage now. But yeah, we find that they're sometimes a little bit cumbersome to apply, let's just say, and it would be nice actually to have some conversations with Sitecore about how we can potentially try and make this a slightly easier process than it is at the moment. Yeah, so in terms of going from 9.3 to 10.2, the other thing I wanted to talk about was around what we needed to do with those existing hotfixes that we'd applied, because we went to revert all of the existing changes that we'd applied from previous hotfixes on 9.3, because we didn't want any of the overrides that we put into our set of overrides directories for our cloud environments to override any of the 10.2 hotfix files that we were going to put into those directories. So we had to go through each one of the individual hotfixes that we'd applied previously, and then remove all of the files that were relevant to those hotfixes from those overrides directories for each role that we wanted to apply the hotfixes to, before we then applied the 10.2 cumulative hotfix updates. The next step is to review the patched out-of-the-box assemblies. So we have quite a few instances within our code base at the moment where we've used patch instead within our configuration. And in that case, what you need to do is you need to decompile your assemblies, and you then need to go through and apply any changes that are in the 10.2 out-of-the-box assemblies that are provided by Sitecore as part of the upgrade. And yeah, so that's quite a sort of lengthy process for us. It was quite a lengthy process that took us quite a bit of time, because we had quite a few assemblies that were like that, and obviously then decompiling and comparing code, it's quite a time consuming, let's just say. So probably a lot of the time that we spend on the upgrade was spent on this part. Next step is to upgrade dependent systems if applicable. So I mentioned DigiSuite as a dependent system for us. We have to do a DAM upgrade. There's also, I think, like there's a number of modules that also Sitecore provide, right? So you have like Sitecore Surya Toolkit, you have the Sitecore Data Exchange framework, you have the Surya Blob Storage, for example, which might need to be upgraded. There's the Sitecore Management Services, or Sitecore Connect Content Hub. There's actually a link here on the slide to where you see the modules compatibility, but upgrades potentially also would need to be made to all of these modules as part of upgrading your solution. So it really depends on what you're using. The next slide, if I go to the next one, is to make any changes needed for any replatforming. As I mentioned, we were moving on to Sitecore Managed Cloud. As we were moving Solar to the search stacks solution, so a SaaS-based search stack solution, I wonder, like, how many people are using Solar or self-hosted Solar here, and how many people are using search stacks, for example? How many are using search stacks?
Depends on the client.
It's changed a little bit in terms of configuration if you move to the SaaS-based search stack solution, because they provide an API in order for you to set up your collections in your cores. So we needed to we created a PowerShell script in order to set that up for us. We're having some discussions now around how we might handle that with regards to moving to a blue-green deployment strategy, because the dev indexes need to be duplicated, we think, as part of doing that blue-green deployment strategy. Get onto that a little bit later when I share the diagram or the Miro board for what we have planned for blue-green. But that's an issue that we're kind of trying to find a good solution to at the moment. And again, that's something that would be good to discuss with someone if you've done it before. We needed to set up new release pipelines. We needed to derive secrets from the key vault as part of those release pipelines, and we also had to then set up scoped pipeline variables for the environments that we needed to deploy into as part of replatforming onto Sitecore Managed Cloud. So the next thing was redirects. This was a bit of an anomaly, which we thought was a bit strange between Sitecore 9 and Sitecore 10, but redirect maps, the functionality around the redirect maps actually changed between 9 and 10. I don't know if people experienced that as part of the upgrade, but basically the virtual folder, the virtual directory in Sitecore 10 was it needs to be updated. So it wasn't appended. So if you have a site that's kind of a sub-site, so we have a multi-site solution. We inherit from we have an inheritance structure within the SXA Site Manager where we inherit from what we call our portal site. And the sub-sites are set up within virtual directories. And the virtual directory was not appended to the front of the URL if you set up a redirect map on Sitecore 9.3, but it is on 10.2, so we had to actually update all of our redirects within the redirect maps, so that we created a PowerShell script in order to do that. But it was a bit of a strange anomaly, I thought, and when we contacted Sitecore about it, I think they were reluctant to provide us with any any solution to it that was recognized by them, let's just say. And the reason for that, I think, is because they obviously had clients that had moved directly to Sitecore 10.2. So they didn't want to kind of publicize, I guess, that there was a solution that needed to be done maybe between 9.3 and 10.2 in that sense. But yeah, it's quite a straightforward thing to fix, but it was something that we thought was a little weird between 9.3 and 10. The next step is to do a cleanup and rebuild. So as I mentioned before, we needed to reduce the size of our XDB database. Our XDB database has grown really large. We've been on Sitecore since 2018, and we were indexing they were too large to manage. It was having an impact on performance, and actually, if we were moving across to Sitecore Managed Cloud, we saw this as an opportunity to try and reduce the size of our databases. What we actually ended up doing was to restore the data from, or what we ended up planning to do was restore the data from Cosmos DB back to the XDB on login. So as people were logging into our website, we were restoring data back from our master record on Cosmos DB. But we trialed this analytics database manager tool. I don't know if anybody else has used that before. But it's not supported by Sitecore, but it's a tool that's developed by Sitecore. We didn't have really that much luck with it, to be honest with you. It was running for a long time. Sometimes it was erroring. It didn't seem like a kind of good process for us to be able to tidy up the records, and I'd be really keen to have conversations with people afterwards around how you keep the sizes of the XDB databases to a reasonable size so they don't impact on the performance. We've made a change now like I said, in that we're no longer indexing anonymous records, which means that our indexes are now a better size than they were before. But yeah, the sizes of the XDB databases end up having an impact on performance of the website, and that's not something that we would like. So we want to actually find a solution for keeping these databases relatively small. We don't really have a good solution for it at the moment. It's something that we're going to be looking at, because obviously we started with fresh XDB databases when we moved across to Sitecore Managed Cloud, and we just restored records as people were logging in. So obviously historical records were no longer taken across. So yeah, on top of that, other things that we had to do, we had to rebuild indexes, we had to rebuild the link databases, we had to rebuild reporting databases, and we had to redeploy the marketing definitions as we were moving across to Sitecore 10.2. In terms of like documentation and testing, so as we were moving from 9.3 to 10.2, we set up some JMeter scripts. I don't know if other people are familiar with kind of load testing. We've set up some JMeter scripts. We ran those through Zero load testing. And ideally, we want to kind of have this as part of our pipelines. So we can run it kind of on as part of regular automated deployment processes. We haven't got that set up yet, but it's something that we would be looking to do, I think, at some point in the future. We ran them just as a kind of one-off when we moved across from the upgrade, but it would be better for us to have it set up on a regular cycle so that we can, I guess, monitor performance over time. And yeah, our documentation, we have a VP in Azure DevOps that we regularly update, and all of the install documentations, both for the cloud environments and for our local environments, are documented in there. So yeah, step 12, you go live, you monitor, and then you go to the hub. But before we can celebrate successful go live, we needed to deploy our solution. And as we were re-platforming, actually this was a little bit simpler probably than it would have been if you were just doing a standard upgrade, because we could redeploy our solution onto separate app services, not the same app service that we were currently on. If you have blue-green setup, you can deploy to like the staged content delivery app service, and you likely need a content freeze from the content editors during that time when you're doing the upgrade. We have to restore and upgrade our master core databases. We have to perform a content sync. We currently use Unicorn, but we're currently looking to move across to Sitecore content serialization. The reason for that is because I think Unicorn is kind of a dying or possibly a dead product. It's not really being updated much, so we're looking to move to Sitecore content serialization. That's something that we're doing in the next quarter. We needed to run a theme upload. We use Creative Exchange at the moment for our front-end assets, so they're all stored as Sitecore items and optimized. And we had to update the redirects, so that needed to be done, like I mentioned before, or also go live. And then we needed to rebuild the indexes at the end. So that was our go live, and it went very smoothly, to be honest with you, because we've done a lot of planning and preparation up front. So in terms of lessons learned, I think two things maybe that we took away as kind of main lessons learned, because we did the re-platforming at the same time as we did the upgrade. I think that added a lot of complexity, and I think in hindsight it's not something that we would have done again. I think it would have been much simpler for us to do the upgrade and then perhaps re-platform to Sitecore Managed Cloud, because we ended up with a lot of dependencies on other teams, and other teams have their own priorities set, and therefore we ended up with getting delays to the project as a result of us waiting for other teams. There were changes that needed to be done to web application firewalls, for example, and our DBA was quite heavily involved, and he also had other projects that he was working on. So I think it was that made it a bit more of a challenge, and maybe a little bit. We've actually moved on to working within a scaled agile framework now. So by that we kind of plan our work 3 months in advance. We have a big planning session at the start of each quarter. So I think that helps to plan work as well better across the other teams within our organization. And I think the other thing the lesson learned is not to get too bogged down with the problem, but to kind of try and think through an alternative solution. Like I mentioned with the Analytics Database Manager tool, we spent quite a bit of time trying to get something working with the Analytics Database Manager tool, and in hindsight, actually restoring the data back from Cosmos DB would have been better for us to think of that solution sooner, I think, rather than to get too bogged down with looking at the Analytics Database Manager tool. So I'm going to move on. How am I doing for time?
Yeah.
I'm good? Yeah, okay. I'm going to just quickly kind of bring you over to blue-green deployments. This is something I wanted to sort of talk about as well, and something that we're looking at right at the moment. Probably a lot of you have blue-green set up already. So, cool. Is this still sharing the slides? Just check the screen.
It's probably the correct thing to say.
Okay. Where did I do that?
If you cite the thing to Windows right,
Great. So, yeah, this is kind of our diagram for how we're planning to do blue-green. So, yeah, to start with, I guess, we want to have content delivery app, two sets of content delivery apps services. So two sets, two content delivery app services, two web databases, basically. What we want to do is we want to have one that's kind of scaled down most of the time. So the first thing we want to do is to scale up the Blue App service. We want to snapshot the web database. So if you think about Green being live currently, then we want to snapshot the web database. And then we want to possibly do some index replication from Green to Blue, but this is something that we're still kind of talking about. Originally we wanted to replicate the indexes, but at the moment we're looking more at actually having a separate set of indexes for Blue and Green that we're keeping up to date all the time as content gets published. Then we want to flip to the Blue App service from the App Gateway. We want to deploy our new poll. We want to publish our new content. And by publishing our new content, I mean running the unicorn sync and doing theme upload and also publishing all of that content out to the new web database because that way we can deploy both the kind of backend code, the front end assets, and the content that needs to be added in as part of or any functional items that need to be added in by Unicorn. Then we would have the production running with version 1.1. At that point, we have a kind of pause in the pipeline. We do some regression testing. We've done a lot of work at Macmillan recently around improving our automation testing. So the amount of regression testing that we're hoping we have to do across certainly our code across the environments in terms of manual regression testing, we're looking to vastly reduce that down at the moment. And then once you have test sign off, you flip traffic back to the Green App service from the App Gateway. Production will be live with version 1.1. Once you then do the kind of the sanity test, you get production sign off, you deploy version 1.1 into the Blue App service, you snapshot the web database back to the Blue App service, and then that will be ready then for your next deployment. And then we can scale down the Blue environment because there's no point in us paying for an environment, that to be scaled up to match our content delivery for production if we're not currently using it. So in terms of what that looks like with regards to a architecture setup, is that too small? Can you see that, or is it too small? No, it is bigger. Is that better? Yeah. We currently use Barracuda for our web application firewall. So we have an application gateway. So what we would want to do is to have two content delivery app services here. We have a passive CDN and an active CDN endpoint. We'd swap those as we were flipping between the blue and the green. So the CDN that we have currently, that only caches content from our so basically our front end assets and any multimedia content that we have. There you go. Two web databases, and then at the bottom here, I mentioned this around Solar, around the web indexes, because the web indexes will obviously be updated as you're running a sync, for example. So this is a bit of a challenge that we're having at the moment about how we're going to be managing the different index scores and so on. So yeah, really interesting to talk to somebody about that as well. And yeah, the shared databases are down at the bottom there that you share between Blue and Green, and there's not really a good reason why. I mean, Master 4 not so much because this is the content delivery, but XDB certainly embedded. And that kind of brings me back to my presentation. And if I share that in here, there's some more information around what we did for the Sitecore upgrade to move from 9.3 to 10.2. I blogged about it on LinkedIn, so if anybody wants to read about it, you can add me on LinkedIn. You can look at my previous posts. If you add me on LinkedIn, you should find it. So you probably don't need a picture of it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Get in touch on LinkedIn if you have any further questions, or if you have any questions now, then I'd be happy to try and answer them. I do have some backup here at the back of the room as well from some of my colleagues. If I can't answer them, they may be able to help as well. So yeah, and I'd like to thank actually Sunita and Joseph. They were really helpful in helping to manage to get us into Sitecore Managed Cloud and moving to 10.2. So just want to give some credit there as well. And yeah, any questions?
Any questions, Harald?
Sorry, yeah, I've got a question. Just out of interest, how long did the whole process take end to end from when you started the upgrade process to when you launched?
So it probably took us quite a bit longer than it should have done, but I think part of the reason for that was because we were moving to Sitecore Managed Cloud and we had dependencies on other teams. So we were I wouldn't say that we were working flat out on the upgrade for the whole time, but I mean, we started kind of planning it probably around like November, December time in 2022. We didn't actually end up going live until a whole year later. But yeah, we weren't working flat out on that. There was a lot of other work going on simultaneously. We were working on the upgrade on a separate develop branch, basically. So yeah, it took us probably kind of a year to get from 9.3 to 10.2, but I wouldn't say that was us working solely on that. There were a lot of other things that we were working on at the same time.
What does the business think the benefit that it's getting from moving to the full complexity of the blue-green deployment?
So currently we have quite significant downtime every time we deploy into our production environment. So that is actually costing Macmillan quite a bit of money. And also, we're not providing answer support for people that need it during those times, right? A lot of people access our websites to get information about cancer. It's also bad for SEO, for us to have downtime on our website for extended periods. So it's kind of multifaceted in terms of the reasons why we want to move to blue-green deployment strategy. Depends really on the complexity of the releases at the moment, how much downtime we have for each deployment. But
is there a lot of really custom stuff sitting around Sitecore there that's, I don't know the details of your particular situation, but it's not, I understand what you're saying though, it's not uncommon for me to come across people who are maybe running separate app services so that they can have something that stays live whilst they ship codes to the background app service, but not actually trying to duplicate everything.
We're not trying to duplicate everything as part of Blue-green. We're only trying to effectively have a content delivery app service and a web database, right? And then just a separate index for Solar and an active and a passive CDN. So that's really where we're going. But yeah, it depends. Like we use Unicorn at the moment. There's some problems with Unicorn, like for example that you have to copy all of the files across to the content management app service at the moment. It's quite chunky the amount of time that takes. We zip it up currently and it copies as part of our release pipeline basically, and then it runs the Unicorn sync. That process in itself probably takes like, how long does it take, Sunita? Maybe like 25 minutes, something like that, I would say.
So
And
have
that's
you got a lot of content in there as well?
yeah, quite a lot of content. We obviously have a lot of cancer information pages, so this would be like treatment types for cancer, all types of cancer basically. So there's a lot of pages on our website. I don't know how many, but it's quite significant.
Yeah, I think there's probably an interesting background question about the plans that you're adopting for deployment generally.
It's not content that we're syncing though via Unicorn either. We don't sync content in production environments, so that's not where the kind of issues are, I guess. But we have, I don't know how other people are, if they're using Unicorn, how they're kind of managing that process. I think with Sitecore content serialization will be vastly improved because we don't need to copy the files onto the CM environment. You can run your sync directly from the build agent. So that should hopefully reduce that amount of time quite significantly down as well. Obviously, as we're moving to blue-green, it kind of becomes less of a problem because you'd be having that secondary environment that will be displaying your website to the end user during the, when you're doing a deployment and doing the smoke testing on the production environment. But yeah, certainly if we move to Sitecore content serialization from Unicorn, I think that would in itself would just reduce that amount of time down.
I did speak to someone last week. They had about 10-minute Unicorn sync time, and they've moved to the information resource package files instead. So packaging those up. So they're still files that you drop in, but you're not then syncing the data because you just drop it into there. Which depends on how you're using Unicorn, whether that's going to be viable. But that 10 minutes became just milliseconds because they're dropped on, and then Sitecore just loads them in straight away, which you can now do. Now you're on 10.1, we wouldn't have looked at that before 10.
That's really interesting.
But yeah,
maybe we can catch up
yes.
about that.
Not a good idea with anything that might be edited.
Yes, yeah.
But it's the templates and stuff.
Yeah, so strictly things that you're always syncing that can't be edited, like not deployment stuff. I've done personally, but that was there.
And the theme upload takes a few minutes as well, I think, at the moment, to upload all the front end files via, because we use Creative Exchange. So that's also time taking, I guess, that needs to then, and then we do the publishing subsequently.
I have one question about the modules. So you said you had to upgrade some of the Sitecore supported modules, but did you have to upgrade, I guess SP is part of SXA.
We didn't upgrade any of the modules because we're not using any of them at the moment, any of the ones I mentioned.
Right.
But I believe that you would need to upgrade some of the Sitecore modules if you were using these modules because there are specific versions that are specifically compatible with a specific version of XP.
So you didn't have any custom modules like SiteCon or publishing module or anything like that, the shared module? You had no custom modules inside your solution?
No, I mean only the DigiSuite DAM, I suppose, which
Right.
needed to be upgraded because there were dependencies between our DAMs, so we had to upgrade the DAM for Sitecore assemblies within our solution, as well as actually upgrade what we call the DAM Media Manager itself, which is basically what the content editors are using in order to be able to have their digital assets.
Okay. Yeah, that makes it a bit easier.
Any other questions?
I was wondering, the data, you mentioned that there was a bit of a struggle with the old XDB data essentially and starting from scratch with the new XDB, etc.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, is the reason that you necessarily wanted to bring that across, was that because it's being used elsewhere? Or were you tempted at some point to almost like make an interface to it and say, now that's an old data lake that we can use later?
We use it for personalization. So we have, as an example, we have a personal guide module on our website where people can fill in at what stage they're at during their cancer journey. So for example, if they've just been diagnosed or if they're going for tests and what type of cancer they have, and if they have children or if they're currently in work or not in work. And then we provide tailored content to people depending on those answers that they've given us. And we use the data that is currently stored in XDB in order to provide that tailored content. Now we also store that data back to our Cosmos DB.
Yeah, that was something.
So, but we don't use the data that's on Cosmos DB for that personalization. We use that from XDB because it's simpler. Obviously, it's simpler integration.
Yeah, that was why I was curious, because the amount of data that you mentioned, I'm just curious how big, how much data were you talking? Because I mean, everyone here probably worked with very large databases, but I'm curious to ask how large you consider very large.
No, sorry.
Right. Okay.
Joseph or
No,
Steve, do you know or not? No, don't know.
No, but it's, obviously there's a crossover at some point when you say if you have the results of what you've calculated for the personalized experience, whether you were to crunch the numbers to regenerate that runtime when the user needs it versus the cost of that massive storage, and having that always switched on.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
Because essentially it's a data lake, right? You have access to data that you need in different scenarios, probably across other platforms as well.
I think the upgrade guide Sitecore do put forward basically shelving your XDB data as part of the upgrade and having it as kind of read-only thing and starting afresh as an option, depending on how much you're using. But it sounds like you needed access to that, data because you use it for personalization really. So.
I mean, it's not great if you have to say as part of the upgrade all your personalizations.
Yeah, I think it can take a long time though, right, to bring it across on Azure and upgrade it, as I understand it, especially from older versions of Sitecore.
That was part of the problem as well, is that the amount of time that it would actually take for us to back up and restore the databases as we were moving across to Sitecore 10.2. Effectively, it would be downtime, right, that we needed, because we couldn't have people updating that data during that time. So
I've heard like a week or more for huge databases.
and you can't have that sort of downtime in your website, obviously. So.
I think we need to wrap up there.
Yeah,
Thanks,
sorry.
Anyway, let's just crack on. So it opened with the keynote. This is David Flanagan. For all that aren't aware, just last month he was named as the interim CEO of Sitecore, taking over from Steve. He was previously the Chief Product Officer, having joined Sitecore as part of their acquisition of Voxever. This is a very brief excerpt from his 35-minute keynote. I thought it was a really, really good keynote. Sometimes the keynotes of SUGCON have been quite dry. Some laughter from there. I think it really spoke to kind of Dave's passion for Sitecore and the fact that he does come from product, because he was very animated on stage and he spoke very passionately about Sitecore and the future of the platform and what they're going to be doing. Everyone I spoke to was quite really impressed with the keynote, and actually, because it's a technical conference, SUGCON to most extent really resonated with most of the people there. Kind of said things that people wanted to hear. So a big theme of his keynote and SUGCON as a whole was about the future of the platform and where things sit with XM Cloud, XP and SaaS in general. Obviously over the past couple of years there's been a lot of push and a lot of talk of XM Cloud and all the various new SaaS offerings. Many customers, I'm sure a lot of people here today are still working on XP platforms and starting to feel left out. So a big part of SUGCON, a bit part of what you spoke in the keynote, was it's not being left behind. They really sort of doubled down on there's a strong commitment to XP. I'll mention there's another slide coming up about another talk which really went into detail about XP. What Dave's at pains to say was to try to think of we have XM Cloud here on the side here and XP over here. You have this idea of these are all your SaaS offerings. And then not to just think of it as XP, but for clients to start thinking about hybrid offerings. So maybe unplugging parts of XP or bits that you haven't actually necessarily started using and start supplying them with newer offerings and bringing in parts of this. So that in the future, if you do want to move to XP with a completely SaaS offering, you're in a better place to do so. So this is what you've referred to as a hybrid sort of model. And these are the roadmap themes for XP that he shared. So better UX for marketers, they'll be looking to the UI refresh on the platform so it matches alongside the new UI experience that's used on the SaaS composable stack, so XP will match with that. better DX for developers, so developer experience. I'll have a bit more on that in a second from Liz Nelson's talk. And composable integration, so they're really looking at trying to see what we've done in XM Cloud or done in the SaaS products that we can bring back into XP. So it's not just things that we're adding into XM Cloud. What can we do to enhance XP? One instance of things there that will be released shortly is the Connect, the XConnect, the Sitecore Connect integration. So being able to push your data or changes. We've got marketing automation in XP already, but there's now Sitecore Connect, which I think is fantastic actually, and it allows you to really integrate with other platforms. So they're going to make these easier to connect together. So out of the box, you'll be able to push data and changes up Sitecore Connect from there that you haven't used to other Sitecore products or tons of other SaaS platforms. Sitecore Connect comes with a lot of support for existing platforms. And integration of AI services as well. And then, so that's what they are doing right now. And then they've touched on a very this was a little bit more abstract because this was just sort of like not necessarily anything they were committing to or exactly saying about what they're releasing today or doing, but this was just his plan and what he sees the platform is going is about simplification across. So these are specific things that he mentioned about simplifying pricing, access to various products, and the products themselves. This is a big theme going forwards is simplification, because people often say that the products becoming too complex, it's too it's just about getting access to the various platforms, and that does include things like pricing, which is obviously a hot topic with Sitecore. Made no commitments, and he's not specifically saying this is going to happen. He's just saying this is what they want to look at, or at least he wants to looking at. That was quick. That was a very quick abstract from his keynote. We then had Roger Connolly, who's now Chief Product Officer at Sitecore, and he gave us a brief update on where AI is going. Just do a brief covering of this. Surya's talk just shortly after mine. We'll be showing you some of this. AI was a big topic. We got shown up a video, sort of an exclusive preview video, and demonstrating how AI is going to look in the platform. And the idea was to expect more AI in the platform. So the example they're giving was imagining that you would give Sitecore your brand guidelines, the colours and things you use, typical images, tone of voice. You feed it with that information, and from that, it would use that to feed in when you to say this is the sort of content I want to represent. Let it fill the templates or suggest page templates and components for you. That's what they're looking to integrate into the platform. So I'm sure Surya will share similar things to that, but that was obviously a big topic. AI is not going away. Next up we had Liz Nelson. So she's the product manager lead at Sitecore XM Cloud. So this particular talk did feature heavily on XM Cloud and headless. So the idea is she was presenting the future of the developer experience. So this was quite technical talk. It was really focusing on things that would make developers' lives easier. This did feature on XM Cloud. So I'll just touch on some of the things that she mentioned. So if you are using Pages in XM Cloud, they are looking to make this framework agnostic. Currently it's really tied into React and Next.js. So they're saying currently the JSS SDK StartKit contain a lot of framework-specific code to support visualization. That will be moving into Pages in XM Cloud itself. This is going to make visualization framework agnostic and basically much easier to go into, regardless of what your headless or consumption is. So they're really looking to simplify this moving forwards. They're looking to make leaner modern starter kits. I don't know if anyone was here for my or Sagittarius from my talk on headless SXA last year, but I was looking at the Next.js starter kit that you get for starting with XM Cloud and JSS in general. They're looking to really simplify these kits down. One of the big things is they want you to be able to deploy front-end editing posts separately away from the authoring environment. Currently, you have to get deployed with XM Cloud. It's a bit limiting and time consuming, so they want to kind of free this up so you can deploy this separately. This will also make it possible, much easier for you to be able to run this on your own machine. So it's removing things such as having to do things like tunneling to be able to get your machine to work with XM Cloud. It looks to move as much as possible into the SDK. If you currently use that starter kit at the moment, there's a lot of code in there, so you're starting with the starter kit, but there's tons of code in there you have to sort of build your stuff around. You want to try and clean that up, move as much as possible out into the SDK. That means you'll be able to have simpler upgrade patterns, and again, this is actually something different, an agnostic style system approach. Something I called out on my previous talk. Currently, the starter kit, if you get it at the moment, it's already tied into Bootstrap and uses a particular way of bundling CSS. They want to sort of extract those things away, so you're not tying into those. I was really good because one of the first things that I noticed with our front-end teams, already may struggle with this because a lot of front-end teams don't want to use Bootstrap, they'll be using something else, or they have their own internal things like grid systems, and some operators have to start by unpicking all of those. So they'll be looking to improve that. And then simplifying them on a repo as well, which is there's a lot of stuff in there, so let's write that down. By the way, I should say there's about 200 slides in there. The 45-minute presentation, which you fit a lot in, so this is really just a small couple of parts. Some very specific bits. So the authoring APIs at the moment, they believe are very difficult to use without extensive knowledge of Sitecore. So these are the APIs that you'll be using if you're wanting to make changes to content items outside the Sitecore. So if you've got a function which is like pushing changes into Sitecore, I think those APIs are difficult to use at the moment. So there'll be new APIs for sites, pages, components, and items. And open sourcing SDK for common utilities. Components, so there's a few, Liz mentioned it as well, but there's also another presentation. I don't know if anyone's using components yet. It's very new, and we sort of demoed first and last year's SUGCON. There's an element of components which is called BYOC, bring your own component, and there's quite a bit of confusion at the moment because we have ways of making components sort of low code, or you have this SXA approach to making components. You have BYOC, which is another code, a low code method of making components. So they're kind of at odds against each other, and I mean there's a whole presentation of pitting them against each other. It's still always not necessarily clear which one we should be using. So they've thought about that, and this is what they want to clear up how they should be used, but also try to align them so they're not really confusing at all. We have very specific use cases, so it makes sense of which one you should be using. And then using the transition between a low code approach to going fully into a full code approach to a component. That's it for business talk. We then had Sitecore DXP talk. This was on the second day. So this one really went into detail on what this was to win people over on the XP front and double down on here's all the things that we're doing with XP rather than XM Cloud. Big bit of this talk was on Managed Cloud, which I'm actually not talking about today. That's a couple of times, so that's useful to tell you. But they have also done a lot of evolution into the how to manage cloud and that little two bit. But this is their big statement. Their statement up front. They're committed to supporting platform DXP with support into 2032 and beyond. Sitecore is committed to continuing modernising XP. These are copy that and paste on their slides. That's their statement. And they're committed to providing customers with the managed cloud hosting solutions. So that's how they're and they went through a lot, so they've got evolutions of that as well for their version 2 of that product. So one thing that's really interesting to hear is release strategies. So Sitecore understands that upgrades can be hard, hence that first talk. What we want to look at now is typically upgrades are going to focus on areas that can't be upgraded, can't be installed as modules, such as core functionality. Basically, the first part is focusing on releasing modules. So if they want to release something new, but there isn't a real reason why it has to be tied to the new version of Sitecore, so it can be made 10.3, 10.2 compatible. They want to release those modules so anyone can use them. And then upgrades then move more onto areas that you can't really get away without upgrading the platform. So these are things like updating experience editor itself or core UX changes to the platform that you can't really install as a module. And that's where the split, they did show us a big diagram of things that are coming up and whether it will be a module or not. But they are trying to stop you always having to force you to upgrade just because you want a small piece of functionality. Then they went to Sitecore 10.4. So that should be aimed for the end of April release. I think it's the 24th. 30th. Oh, it slipped 6 days in. But end of April.
Makes sense.
I'll just mention a few things that are coming to it. There is a big list of things. So I'll just pull out a few things to mention. So there's a new codeless schema extension. If anyone's ever worked with XConnect and wanted to change facets and things related to users, so extend the profile of data you saw users, you have to do that through code. And there's now a means that you can just do that through rules engine within Sitecore, so you don't have to do code to do that. You can just add new properties to be able to store against visitors. I don't know, something that they were championing since Sitecore 9 as well. We haven't got into that. A new analytics extractor for exporting XDB data to Power BI. It's maybe Cosmos DB or something, but just being able to export that data, that's coming. SXA improvement for Tailwind support, improved workflow for data sources, improved multilingual support, and 200 customer issues resolved apparently, and performance and security improvements. Our custom language support was a really interesting one actually, because they had a lot of customers request to be able to create languages, like I said, basically things that are non-ISO languages, and you've got reasons to use it technically, there's like UK Swiss, that you might have a means to be able to want to store that, and there's support for it. And then there's this additional tooling, so they showed us this this diagram, so this is kind of showing what's coming out when, and what's compatibility. So those codeless schema extensions, the analytics extractor that I mentioned, they are coming out with 10.4, but their compatibility actually goes back to earlier versions of XP, so you don't necessarily need to upgrade if you're particularly interested in them. Likewise with the Sitecore Connect for XConnect, that goes back to XP 9. There's currently, if you've seen it already, there's an XM to XMC integration utility for allowing to help you migrate your data from XM to XM Cloud. That's already out. It supports XM 10.1 plus, but they will be releasing a newer version of that that has compatibility back to XM 9.1. So you'll be able to migrate over to XM Cloud versions. And finally, there'll be an XDB to CDB integration as well. That goes back to XP 9 as well. So I think it's really good that they're not just saying this is you could want to take before if you want particular things. The roadmap. So these are things they touched on that they want to be looking at. There's no commitment to when these things will be happening, but these are things they're looking at. Or will be coming. XM and XP integration with Sitecore portal. So the idea is that if you're in the Sitecore portal using other bits of the SaaS platform, it's not entirely just sort of a different login, a different system. You'd be able to just move over into your XP installation from there, so it just brings it into that dashboard. They want to leverage Sitecore's identity management. So if you are using like Sitecore, you can see like the Sitecore identity login. Well, the idea is you would be able to leverage that with XP, making it easier for inviting customers and other people to log into your XP platform. You'll be able to use that. Refresh UI, so I mentioned that already, so this will be just the UI will be getting updated to look more in line with the new UI that's used in SaaS products. And tools to assist with modernising your code base. That one I'm really interested in. They didn't go into too much detail about it, but effectively it's like static analysis to identifying your code that needs updating that won't be necessarily workable or usable with XMC, and code transformations, and apparently it makes use of AI to reduce the amount of manual work required. That's quite a big claim, so I'd be really interested to see like how useful actually what it does. But that's the idea. On the list of about 6 things I cut for time, just that I mentioned. So I'll just rattle through them. Managed Cloud was brought up, including disaster recovery updates, AI content generation, see next talk, Microsoft Fabric Data Lake support, Sitecore Search Module with SXA support, and reduced Microsoft Edge publish time. There's actually a whole separate talk on this. So if you are either in Leaping Stick, which is really good, so if you are using Experience Edge, regardless of whether you're using XP or if you're just using PHP, they acknowledge that publishing with it can be really slow in particular circumstances, massively slow. So they are really looking at reworking how publishing, reworking there to really improve those. In fact, I'm looking for people to like to come to me with like examples of where they've had issues to really tackle those. They're also investigating the idea, one of the things they brought up there was whether to try and make publishing like more declarative instead. But basically the idea is, should you be publishing things at all, or should you it all be driven by workflow? So if you say something's approved, it's then live on the website without users having to go out and approve it and publish things separately. Maybe they can get to a point where things are fast enough that you can just approve things actually onto this live without having publishing being a whole separate operation. That last part there, the improvements they're definitely doing. That last part is more sort of thought exercise. They're trying to think is should we look at changing the platform to make things make sense to more people. So very, very last bit I will just mention. So there are two sort of related but very, very different talks. So you're laughing because you were in both of them. So basically there were two talks which on the face of it were both on XM Cloud and resiliency. When the talks get released in terms of videos, because I think they will be going up on I really recommend both of these talks, but they're really, really different. So Block Bracken's talk was very much for a practical exercising. If you're using XM Cloud, these are situations that you're likely to face, and this is what you should follow. These are good patterns to use, and we went for a very specific worked example in terms of looking at things like looking at index updates and how you would use webhooks, whereas we would have used a local event handlers before. So it's a good, very practical talk that I recommend. Andy Cohen, who works on the XM Cloud team, which is an understatement, but yeah, he is with XM Cloud. But he did a talk on basically how they made XM Cloud resilient. You know, exactly when you go to deploy XM Cloud, what is happening under the hood there, how they came about doing the proof of concept and took it to live. So there's less practical experience in that one. That it's not so much a talk for watching, say, what can I use. That said, it was a really interesting talk and did go into the systems they're using underneath the hood to make it all work. And there is practical things to take away from that and what they do. So that was a really excellent talk that I'd recommend. Last couple of things I'd say, so a summary of it. Obviously, we cut out loads of stuff, but loads of great new additions on the way, and it's not all SaaS, which I think last year's one was very much like going on XM Cloud and SaaS. Don't get me wrong, that covered as well. But the big takeaway was there is something next to be looked after. And yes, they did also go to migrate SaaS editions too, and XM Upgrades there, which are really going to to me, it looks like they really recognise XM Cloud, especially with the developer experience around it. It's been some sort of version 1, and it's a bit difficult to work with at the moment in startup projects, and I think we're looking into how to make that simpler and easier going forward. So every talk is excellent. He loves to talk, but there's not time to cover everything, but the talks are really good. Thank you. That was it, basically.